There we go. Hey everyone, Matt C here, and today we're hanging out with Henry.
Yo, what's
Henry
up?
Bricklider. Is that how you say your last name?
I mean, that's my Lego persona. We'll
Okay,
just leave it at that.
I wondered. I wondered. Okay, that's fine. We all
So
have superhero names. If your last
trying.
name was Kratz, you would probably go by Matt C.
It's fair.
Won't ask you what's behind Bricklighter. We'll just go with what we got.
I mean, it's out there. It's not entirely private, but for the sake of my students not trying to find stuff, I try and keep that on the DL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, which is why my YouTube channel doesn't have my name in it and any like tags affiliated with it, because I don't need them
Oh
seeing my
gosh.
corner content.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to have boundaries, online boundaries, in a world of constant in streaming of everything from everywhere all the time.
Yeah,
You got to build fences. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
I've been interested in chatting with you ever since I first found out you were Floridian
Yeah,
and a Tamp. What do you go by? Tampanian? How do you call
I've
yourself?
never been called a Tampanian before. I think I'm a wet. That sounds like some other words that
Yeah, we probably don't. That's probably why Tampa people from Tampa don't have a term because we just kind of
I'm a
awkwardly realize.
Wesley Chapelian. I don't know because
Okay,
that's
Wesley
actually where
Chapel,
I'm
yeah,
at. Just to dox myself. If you're, go hang out if you go to the Barnes and Noble there, I'll be
yeah.
there. You can
I've,
shake my hand
I've been to
as
that.
I
Want to
as I
know?
look at as I look at the One Piece manga or like what's left of Western comics on the shelves. You'd be like, oh, you're that guy in the corner. I'll be like, who, me? Oh, sure, hi.
That sad comics corner of Barnes and
Yeah,
Noble. That's a great segue.
yeah, it
For
is.
just to give you a bit of background on myself, like I grew up reading Asterix and Tintin type stuff.
Yeah,
And I lived overseas a bit in some Commonwealth countries. That's where I was exposed to that stuff, and I loved it. And then I came home, and everybody was reading Spawn, and I was like, "Well, Spawn looks cool, but where's the like? Is this the only genre we do here? Like,
yes,
is comics a genre or is it a medium?" And in America, it was a genre in the early '90s.
yeah.
Everybody just agreed it's the medium for superhero stuff. So I was like, I guess I don't like. I guess I wasn't properly onboarded, other than just like drawing Spider-Man in my Trapper Keeper or something. So I just said, I guess comics isn't for me. And then I went to college. I went to college in Sarasota, and everybody was reading manga, and they were banned Decidays, and people were exploring crossover stuff. It was the 2000s, which was kind of a
Hmm.
golden age for anthologies. Like people were kind of it was early crowdfunding days. People
Yeah.
were saying like, "Hey, I'm just a storyboard artist at DreamWorks. But I really like comics, so I'm gonna get like 20 of my friends. Like, we're just gonna make an anthology of cool stuff, and it's gonna be wild and weird. We're gonna explore every genre." It was a great like 5 or 6 years, I think, that really popped off, and somehow they got really good. They got really sweet deals with BNN because you could still see some of that stuff. Well, I don't even know actually. You
Oh
might know
wow.
better than I would, but that used to be the sort of thing that was stocking a smaller section, but a considerable section at Barnes and Noble.
That's
And
interesting. I don't know. The landscape's a little bit different since I kind of fell out of all of this. Like really.
yeah,
I feel like it's changed since I was really invested, but I guess we could talk about that. So, but I didn't know that anthologies were big then. I guess that makes sense, right? Internet, like, because like web comics and
mhm,
stuff had just blown up too, and
yeah,
all those like everybody's got their own like little like website in which you know they get to post whatever they're doing.
hmm yeah. I actually don't understand why it blew up. It could just be that it was the web comics era, and people were interested, and Kickstarter just became a thing, and people
Yeah.
were wondering about the what was had not yet been called, but was emerging, this like gig economy kind of side hobby sort of thing
Hmm.
that early younger millennials were kind of exploring. And for some reason, we got half a decade of just like collected short story stuff in comics. It was really cool, and it was very much outside of the big two's purveyorship. And part of the interesting thing, just to land it, is I think around 2014, 15, that started to get ingested. It started to get digested by the big two. Like you started to get like what's her name? Miss Marvel was drawn by, like, you were just saying, like, we gotta figure out, is there a Marvel style? Should there be a Marvel style? Or maybe we need to tap into what people expect in the indie scene and hire some of these indie artists who are also cheaper to draw some of our other stories. And that kind of got me, that was an entry point for me to really try for the first time seriously as an adult, try Big Two comics.
Yeah, okay.
Mid 2010s. Yeah. But so that's me.
That's interesting, because like getting in through the indie scene is not something I guess I anticipated. Just because that's not common. You know what I mean? And but that makes sense, not living in the West here for a while. Or at least in the US, I should say, specifically. Like that's unheard of.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. So yeah.
Man.
And then just to broach this subject a little bit, to give you another entry point, if you want to pick up on it, it was like 2018, 2019, Comicsgate happened. And that was a very interesting phenomenon from my perspective, because that was people who, enjoyers of mainstream comics said, I'm not allowed in my homeland anymore, so to speak. So the local comic shop isn't giving me what I need. So I'm going to kind of be exiled, or, kind of immigrate into the indie space, the proper, like, the self-publishing space, really.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna operate there. And then there were kind of competing ideologies about whether or not, is this a temporary world, like we're just here until we can get back into the mainstream space, or are we gonna make this, is it the indie space, like properly indie, or the self-published space really the place where we're going to grow and thrive and make a new residency? And that was kind of fun to have an influx of people over and to my native land, try to learn my language, eat my food, I don't think they ever really liked being in the indie space, though. It's kind of my conclusion. Ultimately, be happier in where they came from.
Their sensibilities were really just the mainstream, but published by themselves on their rule, by their own rules per se, and never, I don't think, particularly helpful or successful. Not that they weren't, certain ones were successful, but I remember a lot of these projects did not work out or were not fulfilled on time. Like that was what I remember at the end. As I was getting out of it, I remember that's how it kind of petered out into. So I can jump and talk about Comicsgate too, but I might jump on like intro to stuff first, just to help lay that groundwork for you.
Please.
Because I never get to talk about this. I love this, except when I'm with my coworkers. Sometimes I got two of them at work that we spent all of Monday, which was a planning day, just yapping about comics, and that was kind of fun. So
yeah, wonderful.
I haven't read Tintin. I actually have a copy of some Tintin stories collected on my shelf a student gave me that I've yet to read. So maybe now I really should just lock in and look at that. But so I was like 4, and Batman came into my peripheral as a small child, and Batman was cool. And so my parents slowly introduced me to different pieces of Batman media for about 2-3 years as a kid. And he just kind of came into my consciousness and salience through like Batman Beyond and like 2 other cartoons. 2004's The Batman with like the really cool intro that it's got the weird like car humming sound. Anyway, that's a side tangent. I like that one. People don't like that, but I really enjoyed it. And my first comic, technically, I think was, I have it pulled up, Detective Comics number 736. This was from No Man's Land. It was Homecoming, and it came with a Bane action figure because I thought Bane was really cool because he beat up Batman, and
Oh
like
yeah, sure.
5-year-old, as a 5-year-old, you're like, whoa, somebody beat Batman and he's a cool villain. He's clearly the best villain. I don't think he is, but that's a different discussion. So I had that, and then I ended up getting some early reader comic stuff as a kid. But I don't think I picked up on it again until middle school, in which comic book YouTube pre-Comicsgate became a thing. Do you know what that is? Comic Storian, Comics Explained, Comic
Mm-hmm.
Pop. I'm just naming all of them now, I guess. I watched all of
Simpler
them,
time.
and I watched my favorite one though was around longer. They're called Geekvolution with Captain Logan.
Okay.
He's still making stuff today, but
Oh,
I
familiar with that.
liked him and his company and his group of people more specifically because they were analytical. They were really intelligent about the reviews and stuff. He had come from like a proper kind of writing background. There's this guy who does his own independent like writing and essay stuff. He was in college for philosophy at the time, and every time he was on like a panel to discuss something, it was awesome. His name was Steve
Mm.
Baxi. But that discourse, because I had nobody to talk to about this stuff. I just listened to their stuff, which is why I fit into the corner as a lurker for so long. So like I just lived and listened to people talk about these comics I'd yet to read or were looking to read for a couple years. And then I went to New York for some procedures as a kid,
Mm.
and I went to Midtown Comics and I bought Batman Hush, and that was my first trade paperback that I owned. I'd read some stuff earlier in the library, but this was the first one I owned. It was a big deal. And in the little care bag where I stayed, the Ronald McDonald's house, they had a DC Comics essential graphic novels like floppy issue where it was just their marketing of like, look at all these important trades and stories to our company. And I was in my brain, I was like, this is it. This is the jackpot. This is how I get in. I know what to read now. And so for the next probably year, living off of Amazon gift cards and spare cash I could get, I would go to the flea market and buy single issues, and I would use the Amazon gift cards to buy key stories, so like Dark Knight Returns, All-Star Superman, Scott Snyder's Batman run, because that was just the thing that was a big deal at the time.
Mm-hmm.
What else did I pick up early on? So I just kind of lived in like Batman world for a while, and then I think
Mm-hmm.
pretty quickly, because of all the Geekvolution guys, because they were smart and they had ethos, and I trusted their opinion more than the others. They were like, Grant Morrison's Batman is the best Batman. I was like, well, say less, I'll do that. And so that was one of the first like big arcs I kind of followed across trades, and I lived in that world for a long time, and I really enjoyed it. And that was what I
Mm-hmm.
did in high school. And the problem though was because comics like left and lost about 2 generations worth of an audience, maybe just a generation. My friends are like, it's anime, manga, and then at best the MCU and movies. But comics were not on their radar. I grew up in a town in which there's no comic book store within a 30-mile radius.
Yeah.
And no means to get that kind of stuff outside of online ordering, or
Mm-hmm.
through the public library if I was lucky.
Yep.
And so that just
Maybe
made it really
Barnes and Noble if your
difficult.
mom dropped you off for an hour or something.
Yeah, which that was an hour away, so I couldn't even go there where I was
Mm.
living. That was a treat back in the day. I lived right down the road from a Barnes and Noble, but when I was a kid, to go into one of those, that was a treat. That was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really liked it, and these characters are really important to me. And then Comicsgate happened, and I don't
Uh-huh.
remember how I got introduced, but it was your boy Zach.
Yep.
That was like the first. Oh God, he was the one I watched the most. And it was early like SJW, woke trash. I'm gonna rip a comic book and talk about this like gas station taco I ate in the military. And like
Yeah.
that was the proto TLC like crap that I listened to. And I
It was kind
think
of stand up. It was kind of bag, like extemporaneous,
it
lo-fi,
was. And I,
um,
you know what? I
unscripted.
appreciated it at the time. However, I
Uh-huh.
think that was a really good example of kind of echoing the opinions and views of somebody without my own judgment call. And I think Comicsgate was really notorious for that, at least for me. I can't speak to anybody else because I didn't have access to much, and I was reading only back issues. I was only reading things that were already like published and like reprinted and put in trades. And so my impression of the industry, whether it was accurate or not is a different discussion, I guess, was that this industry is really bad right now and there's not much coming out that's good. And so I was listening to Comics Matter with your boy Zach and trying to read Mr. Miracle as it was coming out in issues, which was impossible. And yeah, Jawbreakers. I remember when this got.
Sorry, I'm just trying to annotate your
your
go
for it.
This is fun.
It was cool. So I will say, I'm gonna maybe try and grab it off my shelf. The one thing that I thank your boy Zach for, unlike anything else, like whatever his criticisms aside were valid. I don't think he was more critical on Tom King specifically than I think he should have been, because I'm reading some Tom King work of the era and right before, and it's really hitting right now. But the one thing he did that he put me on is one of my favorite books is this.
This is so fun. Hope you're enjoying this, chat.
It was one of his rambling videos. It probably doesn't exist anymore because he like got rid of all of his content on his channel. Was this was Miller's Elektra Lives Again. I had read the bulk of Miller's Daredevil and Bendis's Daredevil at the time, and he put me onto this book because I didn't know this existed. This is my favorite. This is one of my favorite examples of like what the medium can do.
Oh, fun! Yeah, I don't remember talking about that.
I'll show you some panels. Some of them are kind of graphic. I don't really want to pull those up, but like this is all really pretty. He was explaining some of the art style at the time too. Like the thing about your boy's actually he knew some of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So this was like Miller post Dark Knight Returns, probably right after that. And it seems like this was probably created across a couple years because the style pretty drastically changes and starts looking more like his Sin City work by the end in terms of the pencil work. But the coloring, Lynn Varley's colors, Miller's like particular like pencil work he's doing there, I was really impressed. And that was like, I think as soon as I was introduced to this, I was like, I'm buying this. I'm going to get this. So I read this if I really want to be in a mood. But I think it's one of the best things like the industry, at least at the time, had to offer that I don't see anybody talk about. What else was I doing? Marvel Unlimited, and had a reading app. It was the reading app. I would spend my Christmas and spring and summer breaks with that free trial, and I would read hundreds of issues that way too. So I lived in this world for a long time, and like Comicsgate made me jaded because it got mired in politics and woke stuff, and then COVID hit, and I think I was kind of done with it all, and comics made me sad, and I think there was a time where I just kind of quit reading them, and that there was nothing exciting new in what was going on. Like comics kind of broke my heart, and these mythologies that I really liked, I don't know, had failed, and I think still are failing, admittedly, because I just bought Batman #1 by Matt Fraction the other day, and I was gonna do a Comicsgate style review. I was gonna like cough into my microphone and like struggle to keep it steady and like sit on in my car and review this. I did a nicer review, but it hasn't come out. It's empty. There's nothing here. It makes me sad. And mainstream comics suck. But what doesn't, and I wish I'd tapped into, do you remember Cartoonist Kayfabe?
Of course.
With Ed Piskor, rest in peace, and Jim Rugg. I watched the heck out of them a lot. Their interviews, who was it? Howard Chaykin. I wanted to read like everything he did after that, and I never could access it. But that's how I got into the indie scene, at least being aware that it existed. And that kind of gave me hope for the industry. So at the one hand, like Comicsgate was like, everything's woke and trash. Buy my book because we're not woke and trash, right? At the same time, Jim Rugg and Ed Piskor were like, no, comics are cool, man. Like, we're in, we know what we're talking about. And they were top shelf experts. Like this was like college lecture quality discussion on key books, and all the interviews they snagged with people were gold, absolute gold. And I think that's what kept me from hating entirely. I loved the work that they were doing with that. And now with comics, I kind of pick them up when I can. If the inspiration hits, Tom King's Batman is what I'm going through right now, and that's actually really good. And
you're going through Absolute Batman too, right?
I've read the first 7 issues, And I flipped through 13 that was on shelves the other day, and I was like, what am I reading? We could talk about Absolute Batman. I have a
think I
lot of
did
thoughts.
the first 6, so I'm pretty
I
much.
sent an essay in that chat with you. I could retread that if we really want to.
Well, what do you think? Is there anything you want to say about the Absolute runs in general? Do you like that approach? Is it a good on-ramp? No. Yeah.
So I read Absolute Wonder Woman, Absolute Batman. This is my coworker's copy of Absolute Superman I've yet to pick up and open because I just don't feel it. I'm so not enthused about it. Yeah. He's like, you got to read it. You got to read it. And I don't know. We could talk about it, but I think that continuity really matters. And if we're just gonna do another universe in which it's so unrecognizable in so many ways and yet very familiar in others, like I don't want that. And I don't think there's anything particularly exciting or worthwhile about these pieces. I'm not challenged by them as a reader. There's nothing being said, even like, and we like to get meta and stuff, but we don't say anything particularly interesting about the industry. Snyder has some interesting things to say about Batman, but I felt Absolute Wonder Woman was lacking in everything. It was nice to look at occasionally, but I also don't have like a good grip on Wonder Woman lore either, or Greek mythology. So maybe I'm missing something there. We can say that, but I don't know. There's nothing where I'm like, wow, this is it, the future of the industry. And then I look at like DCKO and I look at Batman #1. I'm like, can we put whatever, I guess, interest and energy into that again? Because like, do you remember DC Rebirth? Were you there for that 9-10 years ago now?
My friends were. They still talk about it. Yeah.
DC Rebirth was a big deal when I was in high school. I was 15, and I remember when the panel for all the titles got released and the speculation and the hype around that. And I was reading the Superman book in trades as it was coming out. It was really great. And I'm reading Tom King's Batman from that time now, and it was like, I think this might have been the last time mainstream comics were good, like actually good, and that the main continuity was worthwhile. Superman was married and had a kid, Jonathan Kent, and Super Sons, the crossover between Superboy and Damian Wayne Robin, was like the best thing. That was how you could have gotten young readers back in. There was such a diversity in the titles, and the continuity and the landscape of the world felt really comfortable insofar as like status quo, like in that like you could get in and it was familiar, but it was so fresh, and they ruined it. Bendis ruined it, among other people, and editorial ruined it very quickly too.
So Tom King not so much, but Bendis absolutely did.
I think Bendis did. So Bendis showed up and took away Jonathan Kent so they could age him up so that he could be the gay Superman. That's why they did that, was so that Tom Taylor could come in and write that. So we lost Super Sons for that. DC also told Tom King he couldn't finish his story the way he wanted to, and so that nosedived. And I'm almost to that point in that story where that happens. I think at some point they split Superman and Lois up again. It all fell apart very quickly, and like everything that I think unanimously everybody liked about DC Rebirth, they got rid of. Absolutely got rid of. For what? Which is what I've been talking about on my channel for forever. It's like the lack of generativity and the lack of, like, nothing matters. Continuity doesn't matter. That doesn't exist anymore. That makes me so sad. Those two teaming up.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. That was really awesome.
So it's funny because the Absolute series, I'm still not sure if it's written for people like me, like they're trying to get me on board, like people who don't understand the lore very much. I don't understand continuity. And if they just kind of rearrange some of the puzzle pieces, it inverts some things, like Wonder Woman's from hell this time, or like Batman is poor. Like those if you rearrange some assumptions about what we think these characters are, can you do that without breaking them? Is kind of that's the question mark around this approach, and it's an alternate, it's a what if scenario, so it's still got kid gloves, I think. Like, I don't think they're trying to incorporate this into a actual parallel universe, or maybe they are. Maybe they got something. Maybe you know more than I do about that. But it's almost like a way. I kind of feel like it's by changing some really fundamental key features of these characters, but trying to not change who they are in terms of their interior world. Like they still have the same values, but if you change their situations dramatically, do you get and keep their values? Can you tell something that makes someone like me, who's not a big two guy, be like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, Wonder Woman's from hell. Let's see what that's about. Oh, it's just okay. Look at all these people talking about what that does to what that retains and what that changes to a character like Wonder Woman. There's a lot of buzz about it. Maybe I'll keep up with the issues. Oh, okay, so this is actually a nod in a way. It's an inverted nod to the actual lore. Well, let me go read a run of something that's more conventional, or let me see what Daniel Warren Johnson was doing with like his like metal version of her a few years ago, and then suddenly I'm on board. I think that's their like business plan, but but to your point, Henry, like I kind of think Absolute Batman kept me the longest. It certainly is the absolute run that people are talking about the most, probably because it's the most. It's the one that's easiest to break in a way. I don't know, like and so they're throwing a lot at Absolute Batman. I should probably bring it up as I talk about it. And I don't know if it can on ramp me to the main storylines because I'm just going to be interested in this Elseworld. If it gets me interested at all, I'm just going to stay interested in something that's not going to matter in a year when they're done with this and they wrap it up and they put it in a trade paperback. And then we're back to square one where I still don't know what to do with the actual lore, So, but they got me to buy a trade paperback.
Well, that's good. They got me, I guess, to borrow my friends because I made fun of that Absolute Batman suit like from the get-go and from what they were doing, and I still have criticisms we can talk about, but I guess the thing, Skankenstein said he liked Communist Superman with Red Sun. That was one of the first trades I read out of my middle school library, like before I started buying my own comics. It was that and Dark Victory. So Commie Superman is pretty cool. Anyway, the problem with, oh God,
you can't beat him up now with
now he's got Venom. Now he has Venom apparently. So now he'll hit you with like a brick and you'll die, like and explode. I don't know. Anyway, I got to keep reading, I guess, just to keep being critical of it. But
Oh, I mean, it's interesting. What if Batman's poor? What if he's working class? What if Bruce is working class?
I guess I like that. The problem I think I have is with Scott Snyder. So Scott Snyder already did everything he's doing here now with Batman, and it's just a different window dressing. There's nothing. It's seeing these photos of this Batman. Snyder's whole thing with Absolute Batman, and what was that issue? It's the zoo. It's where he's building the bridge, the flashbacks with his dad, and he's like looking at the progression.
Yeah.
Snyder already did all this. What Snyder says is that Batman, as he has been before, and you can stop me if you disagree, doesn't work. The vampire Batman thing doesn't feel right. The mystery, like gun-toting 40s Batman doesn't work. It's not effective. I need to evolve, right? I need to be bigger. I need to be better. The problem is, oh God, the dump truck.
He's anti-establishment. He's got the
but he was already
tank thing.
He was already doing that with Zero Year. Snyder's Absolute Batman is almost no different thematically and conceptually in terms of like what he wants to be and do than his mainline Batman from the New 52 like 15 years ago. His thing is like, I can be bigger, I can be better. So when he plasters his face on like a building because he's cool and poor, but he like works the city, so he knows how to like mess with the tech. Like mainstream big money Batman did the same thing or would do the same thing, right? This big bat tank is no different in terms of its presentation of what Snyder wants to communicate than the blimp out of Zero Year when we reference Miller's Batman and say it's the GD Batman, and like there's that big splash page, right? Snyder's Batman is big. He has to be bigger than his enemies. He has to be the whole city. He is the city. He's been doing this forever. He had Batman die or like jumpstart the city with his own heart after 0 Year. So Batman is the literal heart of the city. And so I don't know if Snyder's doing something different with this nasty Bane on screen moving forward, but all I got from that first run or arc was that I'm just going to retread what I've already talked about, because I've already said my piece on this character through my original run, through Last Night on Earth, through Dark Knight's Metal, through my Rebirth All-Star Batman story. He's done everything he can, I think, with this character. And I think that ultimately it's redundant. It's new flavor. It's weird. And he has an axe and he's metal now. He's more explicitly heavy metal, even though his 0 Year Batman was punk rock. Like, I don't know. Just not, I don't know. Maybe if Capullo was drawing it, it would be different in just trying to capture that vibe. And I like Nick Darrington's art, but I don't think Nick Darrington sells me on this world either with what I think No, not with the vibe that I think that Snyder wants for this Batman. Like, I see spikes on the shoulder, giant axe brick bat thing, and I think Dark Knight's Metal, and I think 0 Year with FCO, I don't remember the artist's name, the colorist who did the vibrant lights. Like, we're not doing that. I don't know.
That's fair.
It's not great. I can't help but think about the Ultimate Universe of the 2000s though. With this, not that they're achieving the same things, but the Ultimate Universe was an antidote and a response to only at that point 40 years of continuity with Marvel, right up into the 60s, and providing new readers a fresh start with some interesting takes. But I think that at least Ultimate Spider-Man, I think, did a lot and like was able to have its own legs and tell some really interesting, distinct stuff apart from that mainline continuity. And what I think DC should do ultimately is that they really, really, really want new readers is absolutely blow up all the canon and not do the New 52. It's 5 years, guys. It's been 5 years. Like, no, it's like ground zero. We just start from scratch. They really want to do this.
Really? You don't think they should soft shoe their way in with these kind of Elseworld excursions?
Well, I think that the Elseworld stuff has always been here, and that's fine, but I don't... It shouldn't be... It should just be an alternative to that, which should already be pretty quality and pretty, like, decent, and should be saying things that are worthwhile. But again, I think it's that whole like continuity doesn't matter anymore. We've turned everything into a multiverse. I guess I just don't. I'm not picking up what Absolute's selling. It's fine. I wouldn't say get rid of Absolute, but for somebody who's been in this world for long enough, I'm not impressed. My friends are getting into it, I guess, who are new readers, I suppose. So it's doing its job, but I don't know if it's going to get them to read anything mainline necessarily either, ultimately. And the only reason why my friends have done mainline Batman, Superman stuff is per my recommendation. But then, everybody, it turns into, well, where do I start reading? And it's like, well, you don't. You just pick somewhere because the continuity is all over the place. And Spider-Man has not been in a good spot for a decade.
Yeah.
It's these characters have been like eroded in their value over time. And so I guess Absolute Batman is an example of that being eroded for me. Oh, we've really bungled up and we've made a mess of the main continuity, or we're not saying anything interesting in the main continuity. Mission abort, Absolute Batman. Mission abort, Ultimate Spider-Man. We're giving everybody what they've wanted for 10 years, which is the Peter MJ marriage.
Yeah. I mean, it's tremendously challenging. I could only I wouldn't wish this on my enemies trying to figure out continuity, and give people fresh things that reward long-term investment and bring in new people. At this point, after this many decades, tremendously challenging. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Batman to me is so Twitless and I, we go back a long ways. Twitless and I, we've got a view. I think the reason why Batman in particular works so well is because like all of these characters are like urban, like guardian angels, but Batman's interesting because he's a dark angel, and that gets to be explored in a different way that someone like Spider-Man or Superman, like you can't fit them. We tried to do dark angel stuff with Superman, it's never worked because that's not what his purpose is, right? Very infamously in comics and particularly on the big screen. But Batman, it can be done, and I think that's the sort of thing. That's probably why Ultimate is getting the attention that it is because like we do feel that like a dark angel, guardian angel for the city feels appropriate in a way. It rewards our sense of the city's own sins, and we need like a guardian who understands the problems, the grittiness of a real city. That it feels like Batman's the sort of character that can grow up with us as we get more disillusioned, I guess, with whether or not the city should be saved. Like his universe, like Gotham's the sort of city that asks you to question, should it be saved? Where Metropolis, it's easier to answer that sort of question, or New York City even is easier to answer that. But Gotham, I don't even know if it should be saved. You know what I mean? And so that is the sort of thing that you could get like an Antifa Batman or something, or like he's perennially interesting. Like people want to play with Batman. They feel like you can go kind of farther and kind of press him into these kind of current topics, because he's just a more ready-made challenger to the sort of stuff that millennials and younger want to talk about. I think more than like Twitless is a big Superman stan, and I respect that. Superman's is kind of a challenge to tell good stories. I mean, clearly we just saw this summer people can still enjoy Superman, and that's really fun to discover. But he's precious. Like I think you can more easily break Superman, and I think that's because of the limitations. Like he's meant for a specific role in that universe. Batman's actually got more elasticity to him, I think, because he's more grounded and because he resonates with a more immediate expectation of, he's not super in a very critical sense. So he's more relatable. So we can put him in more environments and ask him to interrogate a real world kind of grounded setting a bit more than we could do. We can't ask as much of Superman. We could ask Superman to do some very specific things very well. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I think Batman is very malleable, and you see that in the 90 something years he's been around. So the one of the dorky nerd conversations that comes up always is like my Batman conversation of like takes on the character, right? And it's always like, well, the 60s Batman is blah 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 versus Christian Bale Batman versus this. And I would say that all of these adaptations and interpretations are pretty, I guess we could say, valid as Batman. But because of that kind of the universal struggle, the Dark Angel archetype, you can put him in just about any time period. You can put him in just about any situation, and he works very well. Which is, and like to your point of the elasticity, and so maybe like an absolute Batman is less difficult to see and like handle than like the absolute Superman, in some respects as well. If we're looking at like breaking the character. or it's easier,
Mhm.
I think, to digest and take a look at a myriad of different Batman stories versus a myriad of different takes on Superman, in which you really only have two, and one of them is invalid, which is what if he was evil.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we're over that for the most part, because that also like ticked me off to no end, was like the evil Superman thing of the 2010s, because no one could write him, and Injustice was really, really
Yeah.
popular.
Yeah.
Uh,
What do you think of the movie?
which one? Superman
Oh,
the movie?
yeah, the Superman movie. Did you enjoy it?
Um, I think I liked the vibes of it, and there are things
Hmm.
I appreciate about the film. But I think what Gunn was trying to do was both do the like cartoon kind of comic book logic, and then at the same time, I think was really trying to address Superman in like the contemporary world with this foreign conflict, which we'd already done before in the 2000s, post 9/11. Straczynski notoriously had Superman renounce his American citizenship so that he could be an independent agent and fight and stand for the world. Um, and I think Gunn is trying to do that and ultimately falls flat, because the arc that Superman should go on in that is
Interesting.
um, either I do forsake and break all the rules because I am helping people and get in trouble and I should just drop my allegiances anywhere, or there are limits and there are things I can't do. So I can't just stop a foreign war. He gets mad and pouty that he did that and gets in trouble, and then doesn't learn anything, because then the Justice League just gets to do it for him and assassinate a foreign leader. And we all just like clap and cheer like it's a Saturday morning cartoon, and no one learns anything. And I think that kind of hurts that film and hurts that character ultimately. Um,
Hmm.
vibes are fine. That movie's chaos incarnate, though. It was hard to kind of find a moment where it was breathing. The best
Yeah.
moment is that scene where he's talking with Lois, and he's like, "The dog's scared. I don't even like the dog, but I'm gonna go help him." Um, all vibes, no content. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not sold on Gun Superman. Ultimately, I thought it was fine, and
Hmm.
I appreciated, I guess, some of the stuff that showed up. I guess I liked that Jimmy Olsen got something to do because I like Jimmy Olsen, but I
Yeah.
don't have much positive
Those
to say
two.
about that film. Ultimately,
Hmm.
and I think, as I'd said before, it's like a 6 out of 10, and that's being generous. And I have no desire to rewatch that film. So, what does that say about the movie?
Yeah. I mean, it was just Gun being Gun. Clearly, people tend to forget, but the the MCU was on its last legs. It was basically done until James Gunn introduced us to talking raccoons
Yeah,
and that guy from Community and stuff. And like and then we got Guardians of the Galaxy and that kind of weird frenetic like ADHD
yeah,
high fructose kind of action uh, was exactly apparently was exactly what people wanted. They didn't want Iron Man 3 over and over again.
yeah,
And it clearly Gunn was hired to do the same thing, I think, to the DC cinematic universe. And it seems like people appreciate that in both universes, which is kind of crazy. But we like my introduction to the mainstream is basically over the last 8 to 10 years of people talking about people who grew up on this stuff and then having the kind of commentary YouTube community discussing it.
yeah.
Everybody always said that DC is where the pantheon of gods are. Like it's more serious, it's more stoic. It's like there's more like virtue in some ways, but it's more rigid too. And then Marvel's like where all the silly slappy like like I'm just a superhero because I fell into a tank of toxic spider juice or something.
That's
Like
such a weird way that perception of these franchises kind of pulled out to like turned out as
yeah,
well, given what Marvel is as a response, given just the nature of those creatives versus what DC was as like as a group at the time.
Yeah, because
They
it's
were
not
quite
necessarily
old.
the case. It's really a
No,
story that we design for ourselves in reaction to how we want or expect, or maybe how we accommodate the way
yeah,
writing is going for that particular period. Because uh, Gunn didn't respect any of those archetypes, and we're completely fine with it. I think we're okay. We're okay with Guardians of the Galaxy in the DC universe, like that
yeah.
approach. I think, and I'm just saying this as an outsider who's kind of enjoying this broadly. It's fascinating to, like, you don't actually have to respect those clear hard boundaries of like grimdark DC versus you know silly power fantasy Marvel. You can actually kind of mix those and blend,
Yeah.
and people still feel, people who are lifelong Superman fans like Twillis still feel rewarded by that kind of approach. So
Sure.
yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, people want. I think there are people who just want DC to have a voice on the big screen, and
Yeah.
they want it to be authentic and fresh, and they just want it to work and not just say, "What if Superman was bad?"
You're
So
right.
if this is the route by which people get that, I think fans are going to be happy. Is the impression I get. But,
I think what I wish, and I like the idea of like have it like DC having a space on the big screen. I do wish that DC could get to the point where definitive interpretations of these characters could exist in a way
hmm.
that the public consciousness could understand. But I don't know if that's going to happen, and I don't trust that in this time and stuff. Partly because I have my own ideas of what these characters are, and that's just a preference thing.
Hmm.
But it's that like cultural kind of perception of these characters, like this is just an icon to the public audience, to the to those who are not inundated, which is fine, I guess, right? But if
Hmm.
we're looking to create kind of bring these back into the culture in some meaningful way through these films and stuff, there needs to be a proper kind of definitive like lens on which they these characters are framed in. And I don't know if Gunn's Superman even does that ultimately.
You know,
um, I hope the Batman film goes well and does something uh different. Everybody wants to see Batman in the blue, and I would be in like the same camp, not because like it looks cooler, blah blah blah, like comic book dork thing, sure, but it's the idea that this character has lived in a particular mode in the conscious public consciousness for at least 15 years with Nolan's Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, and then kind of messed up, I think, maybe by BVS and Justice League, that there needs to
hmm.
be like a repair to that character and that he can be malleable again or appreciated in some other way. Um, and
You're
maybe
talking
also
about,
to get
are you talking
just
about the future the Pattinson sequel?
no, actually, I'm talking about Gunn's Batman movie with Robin.
Oh, I didn't even know.
That's
Goodness.
gonna happen eventually. I'm convinced that the Batman 2, which I like that first film well enough, it's a nice mood piece and speaks to me personally with all my angst and stuff and music sensibilities. But
Does it?
I don't
Yeah.
think that movie's gonna happen. It seems to be a development hell. I don't think it's gonna get out of it. And
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna get that. But this other one, I think it's gonna be called Brave and the Bold, which is really neat. I don't know. I think I would just like to see something that's not just Nolan's white collar crime. Batman is gonna, you know, be an ally with the police and beat Bane and this big mob city riot thing because he just fights white collar corporate terrorists and stuff. And I don't want,
Hmm.
what Zack Snyder did to the character either, which is another bad perception that has kind of picked up on, is like the super violent, like Dark Knight Returns is still the Batman that we have today. Like I want something new. I want the public consciousness to be like, oh, Batman can, I don't know, not be 60s Batman again, but find some sort of middle ground in that world because that hasn't existed for a long time.
Yeah. If anyone can do that, I think it's Gunn.
Yeah,
Not because I love Gunn movies, but because he just does that one thing very well.
yeah.
Is he
No,
knows how
right.
to
He's a one
be,
trick pony.
yeah, yeah, and people respond well to it. Better, like, probably Snyder has waned in the public consciousness. Like, people got a little tired of a few of his tips and tricks, and people don't seem to be as tired of James Gunn. I think somehow like we don't have Gunn fatigue at this point. You know, we might after whatever he's going to do with Batman happens.
Yeah. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make any judgment calls, but I've been talking with my friends and like speculating about what it could be. I like that comment, Skank, because it is very much, I think DC, like if we want to talk about like the religious kind of following behind this, I think it very much does matter to me in this way. The patristic canon of Batman is really important to me. And now that that's been kind of ruined, I've been desperately seeking a new kind of canon to pursue. And if that's Catholicism, it's Catholicism. If it's something else that's hasn't been eroded culturally, it's that. So because it's very hard to live in this continuity when your canon saints have been like reimagined like 8 times over, and what if they're evil or otherwise? You don't have that with the saints. Must be easier being a Catholic with their lore.
Yeah. It's like Star Wars is like somehow Star Wars escaped that a little bit, maybe just from lack of film success since the Disney era.
Yeah,
I think they probably by now, if the sequels had really popped off and people loved all 3 of them generally the way they love the bigger like Avengers type movies, which is what they were hoping for, we probably would have already had the original trilogy remade with new actors at this point, and they would have just like, they would have comic bookified these things, and they would just be these evolving icons that you can update every decade or so, like they've done with Spider-Man. We'd have a Star Wars verse. Enter the Star Wars verse.
I'm glad that didn't happen, but at the same time, I don't think that Star Wars has had a very good fate either, like with what has happened. So instead of diverting and turning it into just a remake slop multiverse thing, it's because all of it is canon. It's like eroded and destroyed. It's like worth, I guess we could say, in value as like a streamlined kind of unified story, like immensely by doing that. And this kind of refusal to branch off and tell other stuff, which is, I don't know. I don't know if I'm. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that exists.
I don't know. I got nothing.
No, it's fine. I'm just annotating.
I didn't realize this was happening. This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So, never mind. I was gonna say he's Batman as long as his parents are dead and he calls himself Batman and his suit is a bat. So, those are the criteria for Batman, I think.
Yeah.
Culturally, broadly, I should say. Maybe not. Maybe like minutia, fine details, but.
Yeah, which is why, Ultimate doesn't work, because I think his mom's still alive in Ultimate.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, Absolute Batman is it does not work that way. Here's
that's
one.
why they do the school shooting thing instead of the back alley behind
Absolute Batman Beyond is interesting. I was just thinking about that in terms of like breaking the mold for continuity and having its own like distinct, still relevant kind of thing. And that was maybe just like the transformation of new characters and the use of legacy characters. Bruce as legacy character, and then this like almost Spider-Man character in Terry McGinnis taking the role of Batman has, I think, allowed that to persist as something that people return to or remember fondly. I like that show and remember that fondly. In a way that Ultimate Batman's not hitting. Like, would it be different? I don't know. Well, I guess Azteca Bat. Oh my gosh. What am I looking at? Is that a conquistador Joker?
Yeah.
Looking to look at. Okay.
Yeah, it's yeah.
I got derailed. I was gonna say something. It's okay.
I've got something for you.
Yeah.
The fracturing of the Star Wars franchise where it just doesn't have a tentpole rallying point anymore. Every time they try a tentpole, it just doesn't work. And every time they explore like a secondary thing, that's the only thing that really succeeds. What do you think about how it's never doing, Star Wars is never doing what Disney wants it to do, but it accidentally keeps dropping bangers? What do you think about
like you mean with Andor when they set that up as the new tentpole and they didn't mean to do that?
Yeah, or even I don't even get the impression that Mandalorian originally was supposed to be as successful as it was, and now it was the only thing that paid the bills for
that
years.
is ironic. No, I think you're right, because Mandalorian was treated as what probably would have been what we would have treated as just like a side comic story from like the Dark Horse publications at the time, but like on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much of that is the idea that we like. There's the understanding that the original trilogy is sort of sacred still.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't like, I think if Disney tomorrow announced that they were going to remake it, there's something more sacrilegious about that. Let's use religious terms for this. It would be sacrilegious to remake the original trilogy. Whereas if we said tomorrow that after Tom Holland's Spider-Man, like his new one with Venom or whatever and Daredevil and crap, if they said we're going to do it again, and everybody like, yeah, we're going to make Spider-Man again. Like nobody bats an eye at that. But I don't know if it's the way Lucas treated the brand in the 80s and into the 90s, but that was at the time it was so sparse and not on the big screen. It was very sacred. And so there's still something I think sacred about the Skywalker saga as a whole. Maybe not. I don't know. So that then I don't know, like Star Wars is, I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question. It's a phenomenon. I don't know how to articulate that, but I know what you're saying. Like I don't know why, other than Andor's competently written.
We're okay with runs in comic books because that's a function of the business. I understand it to be, you know, like, and they got us comfortable with a business accommodation that just had to happen. It wasn't going to be like Tintin. They weren't just going to have one person drawing it and one person writing it, and then when they retired, they just wrapped the whole thing up and put it in a museum somewhere. They said this is going to be an ongoing thing, and we can rotate anybody, and Spider-Man continues to be Spider-Man, and that was a healthy, negotiation agreement kind of sort of thing between readers and creator and the industry, you know. And obviously that doesn't have to be the case with just comics. That's an industry thing that movies can learn and have learned. Like, and it's funny. I think the trick that they did in Hollywood is they said we really want to get to the point where we can have that agreement, that settlement between the audience and the movie industry, where we can just remake this stuff whenever we want. If we've got a new voice or a new angle, you know, or the thing just needs to be revamped, or we've got fresh eyes on a property, and we really think, you know, a younger generation would really benefit, it would explore and really invest in our story if we just did it one more time. You know what I mean? Like they really wanted to get there, and they're like, well, if we just call them comic book movies, which is like they're superhero movies, they're not comic book movies. It's like comic book. It's a medium. We're confusing medium and genre, right? But like if we just tell people, like, you know, like comic books, do you remember those things? Like they were on spinner racks. You don't see them anymore. We're like, let's think about what if movies were like a comic book? And that little trick made all the difference, I think.
Yeah.
And people said, yeah, like I don't actually just have to buy the DVD box set and then they just sit and molder on my shelf. Like I can get new Spider-Man every 5, 8, 10 years. Like that's okay. Because I hear that's what they used to do, or I vaguely remember, or I was all in on how we used to do that with comics. and I think they want to do that with literally everything.
Yes. Well, that's the
And
curse of syndication. Like, is syndication
yeah,
ultimately healthy?
syndication. So and frankly, they it might not be possible. It actually, the trick might only work once. It might
Yeah.
be something that actually works with comic book movies. People can suspend some extra disbelief and play in that what if environment
Yeah.
a bit farther than they will with a franchise, a Star Wars, like a sci-fi fantasy franchise, or the Tron movie that just came out that literally
Oh
nobody
gosh.
watched.
Yep.
Like people just don't give it as much of a rope. They just don't say like, like I actually liked exactly 2 Tron movies. Like you actually don't need any more, but
Right.
people will never
Yes.
say that about Spider-Man. So
No.
I just find that fascinating. It's just a
Well,
phenomenon. They
how
thought that
much
they
of
could
that
convert that into everything. It's just probably not going to happen.
how much of that is the nature of the brand itself though too, and those icons and characters, and
Yeah.
as well as it's like it connected to their creators. Like George Lucas was inextricably connected to Star Wars until he sold Star Wars in a way
Yeah.
that Stan Lee was very quick to just shill it out everywhere, right? And so Stan Lee is
Oh, interesting.
creator of Spider-Man, and we use him and Steve Ditko, like, but they are not inextricably tied to Spider-Man or Marvel in the way that George Lucas was inextricably tied to the world that he created. Because Stan Lee and Ditko and whoever else were creators at the time were quick to syndicate that stuff because it was already being syndicated with things like Batman beforehand. Does that make sense? Like, is that that's the nature of the brand?
That's very interesting. I never even thought about that. Yeah.
And so it is sacrilegious to remake Star Wars because George Lucas is so inextricably tied to it, but it's not to reboot Spider-Man because, well, Spider-Man's always existed. Stan Lee made him, but like everybody's done something with him. Or like we can do anything we want with Batman, even though like Bob Kane and Bill Finger, okay, Bill Finger made him, right? But that's okay because like everybody else has done stuff with him. So then, right, because Lucas is inextricably tied to at least the Skywalker stuff, it is easier to be like, oh, hey, here's Rebels. We're going to do that again with Ahsoka. And, we need to have some sort of relevance and connection to like the source crux of the story, which is Lucas' Star Wars, but we don't want to touch that. So let's do
Mm.
Andor. And that's also not syndicated. And that was not intended to be, because that's the other thing too. Like there's the expectation these stories will end because Star Wars has never deigned to really do anything outside of its main continuity. And that video games, comics, and all that have never been treated as anything more than supplemental, give or take.
Yeah, that's very insightful.
The Force Unleashed probably was never canon actually, right? With like the video game with Starkiller, and he like has
I
super
don't
force
think it.
powers.
Yeah, I don't think it was top tier canon. Top shelf.
Unfortunately now though, because it's on the big screen, Mandalorian is canon. But that's almost got like the endless syndication like problem now. I think that show was supposed to have just an end in that first season, right? Seemingly. And then Baby Yoda made money, and now we have to syndicate it almost and keep things
Mm-hmm.
going. And so then when they do interact with characters from the original trilogies, there's something really gross and weird about that too. Like Luke Skinwalker, like the CG Luke and AI
I've never
deepfake
heard
stuff.
Luke Skywalker. That's a perfect. Why did I not hear that 2 years ago? That's great. And yeah, the CGI Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian. Yeah.
Yeah. So then it's weird when we do mess with that. Um, and then like something like Andor really, I think, excels by as best as it can participating in that main continuity. And then also being wholly distinct in a way. Uh, oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh, so bad. So weird. Remember when Sebastian Stan was rumored to play Luke Skywalker and everybody thought that was a good idea? And I was like, that's a good idea. And then they did
Great idea.
this. Um, Again, the problem with this like Luke Skywalker thing, it's not the James Bond. James Bond also escapes. Actually, James Bond is just as much of a problem with like Spider-Man and stuff. Like we reboot James Bond because it is also okay, syndicated in loose quotes because we've had so many people play him and he's more of a cultural icon before he's like an archetypal character in the same way,
Mhm.
right? Batman and James Bond are more close than James Bond and like a Luke Skywalker. And so it's not. And then Indiana Jones should have probably been a James Bond like character. And I think we could have gotten away with having somebody other than Harrison Ford do that if we really wanted to keep making those movies. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. They may have to. I'm sure they've been optioning scripts for years to try and make that work. It's funny that they didn't pull the trigger on that. Maybe because at the same time as they were trying to revamp and put some life back into the Indiana Jones franchise, they were struggling so tremendously with Star Wars. So they just thought they'd be conservative in some way by putting, like 78-year-old Harrison Ford in another film against his will.
Well, I think that maybe if
River, sad because he could have handed it off, and they were clearly they were trying to. I think Spielberg. It seems clear to me that he was trying to hand it off to Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
and I that they were just tremendously upset at themselves with that casting situation, because they would have had a handoff after Crystal Skull if it wasn't for Shia LaBeouf being Shia LaBeouf in the 2010s.
Well, it would have been for Shia LaBeouf if it wasn't for Shia LaBeouf, but also if it wasn't for that like 2010s era, everybody hates the prequels like era of criticism as well, because that's, I think, also in response to it. I think of like Red Letter Media and like prequel haters of the 2010s, I think did nothing for Star Wars one, but I don't think it did anything for Indiana Jones either, because I think there's some overlap in those worlds because they're both Lucasfilm properties.
Mm-hmm. Well, so where do you see? Is there anything you're excited about that's on the horizon that's coming? I don't know. In these kind of tentpole properties, is there anything that you feel like we should be looking forward to?
No, I think that's been my whole problem. In any of my conversations, like there's nothing about these properties right now that is exciting, and I think I only seek this stuff out now once it's come out and it's proven to be good. Like there's no more like I'm so excited. Basic like the nerd culture of the late 2010s, 2020s of like everything's exciting, everything's great. Like don't have that disposition, and that's not the thing to have because of how many blunders have existed. The one thing that I thought that was worthwhile and important and like couldn't be like ruined was Daredevil, and then Born Again came out, and that made me absolutely mad.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Born Again. We didn't talk about Penguin
the Penguin was really good.
Yeah.
But again, I was not like, oh boy, the Penguin. I'm so excited. I've always been a Penguin, like that crap, like fake Geekland of the 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe Gunn's Batman is the only thing that I can say I'm like looking forward to with how little information we have. And maybe the Supergirl movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
Which was based on Women of Tomorrow, which is a Tom King book, and that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was impressed, I guess, by whoever played Supergirl at the end of that movie. And I was like, this will be a very interesting film if this is our main character. And Gunn, I think there's room for a really interesting arc about maturity and growing up and coming into like the role of like super person. I think that could be done there. Will they do that? Will that work? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with this 20-something-year-old Supergirl acting like a bunch of people that I've met before, I'm like, oh good lord, like I know this person, I've met this person before. I think there's a lot of room for a pretty decent. I think you could tell a really good story about her becoming more like Superman or filling the role of the emblem that she wears and stuff.
Yeah. That's always been my vague sense of the super, like the Krypton family, the extended family from Krypton is just different ways of allowing us to let Superman stay Superman, so that we can tell some different stories and not break Superman. You know, like we could do a coming of age story that like Ultimate Superman's trying to do and not doing it very well. We can do that with Supergirl,
Yeah.
is my understanding, and Gunn is probably the guy to do that. Honestly, like that's probably going to be a good on ramp for people to be excited about.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the Batman Robin movie, Brave and the Bold, might be good too, because that's all about father and sons. If Gunn is believed to have Damian Wayne Robin in that, that's just about like how do you deal with like your dad and all that. A friend of mine was talking about like this could be a movie about like divorced parents, because Damian's whole introduction is, well, my mom's the lead, like the inheritor of the League of Assassins, and my dad is Batman, but they're enemies, and I just want them to be together, and I can't have that. Like that's what that whole first story about him is. And if
Oh,
Gunn
really?
is smart, Gunn maybe should focus on that being the film. It's about like Damien as the lens, and you see it, like you get to be like, all right, this is what your dad Batman does, and your mom's a villain, so you can't have your family whole in this way. You can't have like that complete, but you can choose, right, what you do with, who do you join. Like that would be the tension. I think it would be a really interesting movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's in line with like Guardians 2, right? You could make everybody cry with some like Robin Batman moment like never before, I'm sure, if Gunn could
Oh my
do it
gosh,
right. Play like his sad like 70s Cat Stevens music, and everybody cries over like Robin like
yeah.
begging
Oh
his
no.
bat dad to like not do something or what. Like I don't know. There's something there. I think
Yeah.
Gunn's the guy to make
He's
that
good
kind of
at
sad
broken
movie.
family stories and
Yeah.
ragtag people who have to build their own kind of families, out of outsiders.
And I think that
Who,
Batman as
yeah,
a character is an avenue just to do that, because he's like, I'm a loner, and then has the biggest family and like of characters like imaginable. He's got 4 Robins, 3 Batgirls,
yeah.
Alfred, and then like a whole cavalier of, other people who hang out with him. And so I think Batman is also the avenue for Gunn's that genre of like story, like that style of story Gunn likes to tell. So based on just my own speculation and like how I would write the story if I were James Gunn, like sure, I'm excited for both of these films, but you know, I will not actually have any like I'm looking forward to this until, close to it. Because even when Superman got announced, I was kind of hyped for a minute, and then all my hype for it like left, and then it came out, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait. Like I'm still polling. Like initial reactions, I was like, this will be great, and I let it cool off. Like you should, like let this stuff cool off, and then come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also been burned too many times, and I'm sick of that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really, I guess that's the lesson. That's the lesson that we've had to learn is the fandom approach uh, comes with a lot of trade-offs. Like going into something as primarily a member of a fandom rather than just saying, you know, I really like Damian Wayne. Like here's the stuff that I've got, you know, from his story arcs. This is the stuff I like. This is the stuff I don't like so much. You want to try it sometime? You can borrow this trade paperback. But like
Yep.
instead saying like I'm buying in as like a consumer community into that may already be co-opted by the industry that it relies upon. Like that's what the last 15 years, I guess, of like commentary communities on these kind of
Yeah.
fandoms have suffered from. And then there's backlash, and then there's failures to even right the ship in terms of the backlash. But I mean, God bless Hollywood for still trying with these properties. They haven't abandoned them completely, even though it seems like 2 out of the 3 movies that they put out so far in comic book Hollywood land seem to be complete flops.
Well,
It
also,
says to the persistence of not just the fandoms but the stories themselves that people
I was gonna
want
say that. Yeah.
to keep trying. Yeah.
Like it's despite maybe like their intentions or like poor efforts, we haven't like dropped any of these characters out of our public consciousness as important.
Mm-hmm.
Like as rough and as awful as like some of that late game MCU stuff has been, or how much of a mess like Spider-Man has been before, whatever, like, or Batman or Superman, like everybody's still ready to come back to these characters because they are essential to at least 20th century American culture, or just to the culture of the US. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
jeez.
And that's really that's helped me to continue to come back to these things as you know, these properties I only variously understand. I have to rely on a lot of knowledge from people who have invested a lot more consistently and deeply to even understand what I'm looking at half the time.
Yeah.
And they keep saying it's worth it. I'm glad we're still trying. We're still coming back and taking another crack at the bat because these stories are worth it. And that motivates me to keep, showing up and not necessarily not automatically buying the ticket to the next film, but saying, let's see what they have to say, which is fun. So yeah. But this has been a fun conversation. I hope you got what you wanted. Because I know
I mean, I could
did.
do this forever. Like, pick a topic, type spin the wheel thing. Like, I could do this all day with a myriad of things. So
yeah, and honestly, I think you feel the same way. There's a lot of talk in this particular corner, the corner in which we met, that is thoroughly well mapped. It's a lot of fun to be there and just sort of talk about the kind of wheelhouse topics that people don't really talk about. But I think, Henry, you contain multitudes. You have more than one topic that you are interested in. We didn't even get to touch at all your interest in Legos. I think that would be fun in
that
itself.
would be
fun. And and just comics. Evidently, people in the chat have been enjoying the comics conversation. I didn't even know people in TLC enjoyed comics as a conversation, so it's good. It's good to explore this with someone.
Well, this gives me hope on my channel, because that's all I want to talk about right now. I find it really difficult sometimes to keep up, just like with comic book continuity. It's really difficult to keep up with TLC continuity and the discourse, for multitude of reasons, just living life. And so it's like, I don't really want to talk about, I don't know, Christian nationalism or liberal Christianity. So I'm just going to go over to my corner and talk about why Batman comics are bad right now. Like, I don't know. That's all I want to do right now, is kind of like push away from that, because I don't have anything to say. And I don't think it's probably wise to say something where there's nothing to be said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for carving out an hour-ish of your time this Wednesday. Thanks, folks in the chat, for hanging out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We're going to do more content like this in the very near future. Hope you guys have a good evening.